Welcome to Launchbase, a fast-paced podcast exploring the latest in tech funding and product launches. In under 30 minutes, we break down key trends, interview industry leaders, and uncover what's driving the next wave of innovation. And now your host, John Radford.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Launchbase. This is the podcast that dives into all things tech, business, and innovation in under 30 minutes. So I'm your host, John Radford, and each week I chat with individuals shaping the tech landscape. So today I am joined by Hector Hughes. Hector is the co-founder of Unplugged. They are a hospitality startup designed to help people escape the noise of modern life with unique off-grid cabins. In a world where we're constantly bombarded by notifications, emails, and screens, Unplugged offers an antidote. A chance to disconnect, recharge, and refocus. So Hector's journey from the world of tech to building a business centered around digital detoxing is pretty fascinating. So in this episode, we're going to cover digital detoxing, the movement, what it takes to build a hospitality startup, the impact of going off grid for just 3 days, and lessons from growing. So let's get into it. Hector, thank you for joining us.
John, absolute pleasure. Very much looking forward to this.
Excellent. Cool. So that was my sort of maybe slightly long-winded intro, but maybe you could sort of give us a bit of a back-potted history of yourself and how you kind of got to doing what you're doing now and kind of the story behind it and your journey.
Yeah, I guess the kind of journey in startups generally started after university. I did a master's degree, didn't really know what to do afterwards, assumed I'd probably go into finance, filed some grad scheme applications, didn't get any of them, perhaps fortunately. And a friend of mine suggested that I just apply, go work at a startup for a year, and then you can reapply to all the grad schemes the next year. So I applied to 20 startups. One of them offered me a job, which is a company called Nobly POS. So it's iPad point of sale system. So if you go into a restaurant or a cafe and they use an iPad for the till. And I joined them as the second employee on the commercial side. My now co-founder was the first employee, so we actually met in my job interview and did the classic kind of high growth, international expansion. It's very exciting, mess behind the scenes as these things always are. So, lots of valuable lessons there. We grew to about 70 people, opened up in the US, Australia, had our development team out in Uruguay. So a lot of fun. I did a few different roles over the years. Did sales for a year, wasn't great at that. Then I ran product for a year, which was good fun. Went out to the developers in Uruguay. Wasn't much better, but perhaps a little. And then I ran growth for a year. So just started helping the marketing team out with some numbers, and that turned into a growth role. So got a really good, I'd say, holistic education around startups. I think I came out feeling like I was completely unskilled at any of it, but you learn a lot of the soft skills, I think. So dealing with uncertainty.
The soft skills, I picked up on a couple of things already on that, is the kind of the product and the growth and the sales side of things, which are some of the soft skills that, I talk about quite a lot and that I think founders need to have. So even if you've done a year of sales and you said you weren't great at it, you're probably better than you think you are. And it's such an important thing to have.
100%. I think it also just gives you, doing it yourself just gives you this kind of understanding and empathy with the different parts of the business. To actually do a role and to actually spend a year thinking about, how a new feature needs to work or whatever it is. It just allows you in the role I'm doing now, obviously running a company, to empathize much better with those different functions and just to understand what great looks like. And I think what was really interesting for me is I was not great at any of those roles, but I think I got a really good understanding for what great did look like. And so it's much easier now to spot that. So yeah, it was a fantastic experience. But then towards the end of it, I just got kind of dissatisfied. I was living the busy London life, going out a lot, traveling a lot for work, all these kind of things, and spending all day on my phone. And that really started to become a point of anxiety for me. And I read a book called Digital Minimalism, which is basically about the benefits of spending less time on your phone, by a guy called Cal Newport, who writes a lot of books around, deep work's another one of his. That just really appealed to me as an idea, and then didn't really do anything about it till a friend of mine recommended this silent retreat in the Himalayas. And at this point, I was pretty burnt out and fed up with everything. And so I just thought, what the hell, I'll give it a go. Yeah, why not?
Let's do it.
So I flew out to the Himalayas, and it was a Buddhist temple on top of a mountain.
Wow.
And the best thing about it is when you get there, they take your phone off you, and you just spend 10 days completely cut off from the outside world.
Did you feel a bit weird at first? No, that's my dummy.
You do feel super uncomfortable. The first, you get phantom buzzes and all these kind of things. But there was also, I hadn't even realized, but there was just this accumulated weight that just fell off. And as soon as I locked away my phone, I was I just don't have to worry about anything for the next 10 days. So you really go through the whole emotional roller coaster while you're there. But the actual getting off the phone experience was incredible. And then very cliche, but came back from that, quit my job a week later, and got started with Unplugged, which, as you said,
Amazing.
is we are looking to get people offline and into nature by digital detoxes at off-grid cabins in the countryside. So we've got 35 cabins at the moment, most of them in the UK, one in Spain, with more on the way there. And yeah, it's really about, we basically see ourselves as an experience company. It's really about, can we actually get you to spend 3 days off your phone, in these beautiful settings? Because that's the hard thing. Because
Do you take the phones off people?
I personally used to for the first cabin, but my time's a bit more restricted now.
No.
So now it's all self-police. But
It's self-serve, right?
it's really a behavioral psychology problem because, if what we found is when we were taking people's phones off them at the start, they would see a cabin on Instagram come to stay, and we'd try and take their phone off them, and they'd be like, "What are you doing?" Like, "No way, I'm giving you my phone." And so it's won or lost before they even get there. That you have to, the whole brand has to be around that, and you have to get people excited that that's what they're coming to do. And if you can do that, then and they've told their friends, they've told their family, then it's much easier. So yeah, that's really been the goal: is can we build this whole brand around this is what we're trying to do, so that we can actually get people to spend time offline.
Amazing. And is there like a come down period that people have when they're sort of off the phone?
Yeah, definitely. So we fix our stays at 3 nights. You can also do 4 nights, but 3 or 4 nights. And the reason behind that, so there's other like cabin concepts out there, and the average stay in that industry is 1.8 nights. So a lot of people go for 1 night or 2 nights. And what we found is if you actually get off your phone, then it takes about a day for the mind to settle down. So as you say,
that's what
like
I figured.
the first like day, you're actually a bit more anxious, and you kind of feel a bit like you've lost a limb. And it's only really waking up on that kind of second full day that you just start to feel this deep sense of calm. So we want to make it long enough so that people can go through that initial come down, as you say, and really start to see the benefits at the other side. And what's crazy is that sense of calm, which almost feels like supernatural. That's how humans are meant to operate. Like, we're not meant to be this overstimulated, anxious mess that we find ourselves in today. But there's just so much stimulation. I mean, as soon as you wake up in the morning, most of us checking our phones, you're hit with whatever messages are coming in. You're thinking about a million different things. And then we just live the whole day in that state.
Yeah. Yeah, we do. And yeah, I'm guilty of it. My wife's very good. She keeps her phone downstairs.
Amazing.
And so she sort of won't bring it upstairs, which is great. I am guilty of it. The first thing you do is I sort of tap on the phone and up come the notifications, and it's a really, really bad habit. So on the kind of the detox thing, who's your typical client? Who do you find is using your cabins more?
Yeah. So there's almost 2 different groups. There's the biggest is couples. There's about 75% couples, and I would say we do get quite a broad age range, but the core is probably the 20 to 35 pre-kids, both working and living in a town or city. Or you get the maybe slightly older, slightly higher net worth founder, coach, whatever it is, who wants to just go by themselves and journal and think and whatever it might be. So those are the 2. And actually the couples thing really surprised us. I think we saw it as more of a, you just go and read and journal and whatever it is. But actually it's really quite a profound thing to do as a couple, because most couples that have been together for less than a decade probably haven't spent a day together without their phones. And there's some amazing research that just having your phone switched off on the table, so not even on it, reduces the empathy between 2 people.
Really?
And you're now looking at relationships where the phone's there the whole time. And often you're scrolling through TikTok, you're not just, you just have it switched off on the table. So I think what that does to relationships is really underappreciated, and it's only again when you take it away that we realize just how much we're losing.
So even to that deep level, if you go out for a meal in the restaurant, but then the phone is there on the table, is that particularly damaging then?
Yeah, I mean, it's again, particularly that we get by, and I think that's the thing. But I think it does make a difference,
And why is it? Because it's just subconsciously there, or
yeah. So another really interesting study is that you'll actually perform worse on an IQ test if your phone is there. And if you think about it, it's because IQ, empathy, like all of these things come from focus and attention, and just being able to concentrate on something. And our phone stands for so much in our life. Like, it stands for all the kind of ex-partners that could be texting us, all of the emails we can get from our boss, or like whatever it might be. Like, so much shit comes at us through our phones.
Yeah.
That just having that in our periphery just occupies our mind. It's like if there's an ex-partner standing in a room with you and you can see them out the corner of your eye, it takes a huge amount of your brain, right? And I think it's just that understanding that what is in our environment, like we're massively affected by what's in our environment, like subconsciously, much more than we know. And I think it's it's almost shackling ourselves and our minds, and that shows up in how intelligent we are or how empathetic or all of these kind of things. So there really is something about out of sight, out of mind.
It's fascinating. So I want to talk a little bit about growing the business and your previous experience. And so obviously the business is doing well. You've raised capital, correct?
Yeah, we've raised
Yep.
a couple of million equity and a couple of million debt.
Great. So I'll get onto that in a second, but I want to go back to the past, if I may, and talk about your first job at that startup that scaled to 70 people. And I want to understand what you learned through that you applied to, building Unplugged, and how that kind of shaped your experience with Unplugged.
Yeah, for sure. So many lessons. I think some of them I have spent time reflecting on this before. Some of them that really stand out. One is just how much the product impacts your ability to market it and sell it. And I think one of the issues we ran into at that startup is we started off building a coffee shop point of sale system, so working with coffee shops, and then we thought, well, we can, if we add this functionality, we can also sell to restaurants as well. And then, at some point we were looking at retail, and at some point, and in the end, we ended up not building a product that was incredible for any one customer base. And, we missed bigger opportunities. So the iZettles and the Squares of the world realized that to build the best coffee shop product and for all these independent stores, actually it was owning the payments and giving the POS away for free. So there were just all these opportunities that we missed because we tried to be everything to everyone, and ended up with, there was no real, so, I wasn't a particularly good head of growth, but it's also like pushing water up a hill because, there's just nothing that really cuts through the noise. And so I think one of the big decisions with Unplugged, at the start, we'd heard this cabin concept, and I, really wanted to, just thought it was an incredible space to be working in. And then the idea of, okay, well, should we actually lock people's phones away came up. And that became a very obvious choice because, one, it does just create a better experience. So people are going to go out and tell more people. And also, like, it just makes it so the difference between we're a startup has cabins in nature and we're a startup that has cabins in nature and we lock your phone in a box. Like the second one, you might go away and tell 20 people instead of 2 people, right? So there's an exponential difference in terms of your word of mouth and virality and remarkability. So I think building something that really stands out from the start just makes your life much easier was a huge learning. And I think the other one was around people, because we hired really aggressively. We had really badly at the start. So we had one summer where we had over 100% staff turnover in our London office. So we had people literally coming in and they'd be gone 2 weeks later, it was just absolute carnage.
What do you think the cause for that was?
I think there was a complete lack of, rigor and process around hiring and how we approach that. And I think we had cultural issues as well, which I'll get onto. But then on the hiring point, we brought in a amazing head of people, a woman called Nuria, who had worked at Microsoft and so on, but she'd done some startup stuff before, and she just completely transformed our hiring. So actually, for the last year or so that I was there, we did a really good job of hiring. But at that point, it was almost a bit too late because the culture was really not in a good place. And I think what we got wrong there is, for whatever reason, we just got to a place where there wasn't any psychological safety. Again, I think there were a couple of kind of hires that that shook things up. I think you can kind of poison the pool a little bit on the culture side of things. And we got to the stage where, it became whose fault was it, rather than, if a problem came up, all the focus went on whose fault rather than like, how do we move forward? How do we solve this?
Right.
And I think as soon as you've got that, then it just compounds and creates a toxic environment. And so the company actually went through a massive restructuring just after I left, and then they ended up, really getting lean, getting back to basics, and scaling it for a couple of years, and then selling to Revolut for a really good result. So I think, went through a huge journey of learning as a company, but we really got it wrong, and then eventually figured it out.
Yeah, that's part of the gig, isn't it? You kind of learn as you go.
Yeah, I think the learnings that I've taken from that, one is to just hire much more slowly, because you just think it's a bit of a vanity metric as well, hiring. You feel like if I'm hiring, I'm doing well. And people create work, people create problems. There's something about having small teams with very high agency people You can just get a lot more done. And two is just really looking for, sort of couple of things that we look for now when we're hiring. One is, people who have actually been through failure, because I think they're undervalued by the market. You have a certain like intellectual humility at which you approach it, because you've seen how it can go wrong, and you maybe just understand the essence of something a lot more. And then, on that intellectual humility point, like the second point is we do specifically look for people who have just that, are intellectually humble, and they really are interested in their weaknesses and how they can improve and what the actual answer is, rather than get into this political blame game of whose fault is this. And I think there's so much posturing in so many companies, and it's just such a
so
waste
interesting.
of energy.
When you see a CV come through and the LinkedIn job title, the LinkedIn sort of profile title is X something.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
It's definitely a mark against. I mean, I try not to.
Really?
I try not to be biased by like CVs, but we all are biased.
To me, those sort of people, not to generalize, of course, but will not necessarily have some of those qualities that you've just mentioned, because they probably haven't necessarily been through some of those failures and whatnot. And it's great. Like there's skill sets that go with working in a company like that versus working in a startup environment. And to me, they don't necessarily match.
Yeah. If we were hiring and someone was ex, McKinsey, Facebook, etc., then I would definitely mark that against. And I try not to bias and meet the person, give them a fair chance. But I think I'd be lying if I didn't mark that down.
And I think in those early days of a startup, not that you are, but in those early days, like you want all rounders, you want empathy, you want hustle, you want all of these great things, and that kind of that curiosity to learn that every good founder should have, and you want some of that mirrored into an employee as well.
100%. Yeah, exactly. I think those things are very hard to measure. And the issue with these people who've, X somewhere big is that masks all of this, right? And people are trading off that. Is when people don't have the big badge, then all they've got to trade on is their character. And like, those are the things that really matter, So I think I'm much more about character rather than where you've worked.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, so on your LinkedIn, one of your pin posts is kind of these 10 lessons, and I want to touch upon a couple of them. Can you pick out two of the main ones that you've had? I mean, we've just talked about the kind of growing too fast. I think that was one of your lessons in your sort of 10 things that you've learned. Give us a couple more of those that you're happy to expand upon and that you think really kind of hit home with a lot of the kind of scaling founders. So typically we're talking with scale up founders going from sort of that MVP to Series A and beyond.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I can't remember exactly what's on that list, but I have actually done a 5 for this year or for last year. So that's more front of mind, and the same themes crop up. So one of the things that just strikes me every year, and I'm just coaching myself to get better at it, is the losing focus. And I think it's just the most important thing, is to stay focused. And there's just this sense of I think what makes you gets you started in the first place as a founder, then gets in the way later on, because I can't remember who, Richard Branson, or someone described it, that Richard Harpin, the founder of HomeServe, that founders are foxes, where you're always sniffing out the next opportunity, and sometimes you just need headshots, because amazing things happen when you plug away at the same thing for years and years and years and years. And we've had so many moments where we've had all these like exciting, interesting opportunities coming up, and I've got really excited about that, and we should go and do this, and really kind of gone down that rabbit hole. And I think when I'm most susceptible to that is when I'm insecure or I haven't quite figured out the path forward with the core thing. So it's like we're up against some hurdle, which you are all the time as a startup.
Gotcha.
And if there's a certain hurdle, which I haven't like got my head around yet, like how we overcome that, it's like, so the unit economics aren't in the right place or whatever it might be, then I'll go and chase some completely other business line that would have better unit economics. Well, it's like, no, actually, I just need to improve our unit economics until they work. So it's been really humbling and really informative just to go through that process year after year. And I think I'm getting better at pulling myself out of it. And there's now, I can feel myself get excited about something sometimes. That I'm starting to develop this voice where I'm like, you're getting distracted. You just need to keep the main thing. Is
that though a characteristic of what I would call a sort of true entrepreneur, in that you've got a founder versus an operator, and sometimes founders need to learn to become operators because they're different things, right?
100%. It's exactly that. It's like in this role, you just have to evolve. You have to evolve every year, every few months, and I think that is the difficult thing. And I think a lot of founders don't, and just end up going and starting stuff and that's also fine, right? But I think the ones who really endure go through that transition because it's a very different skill set. And I think you need to be kind of brutally self-aware that you're falling into these traps. It's so easy to rationalize, it's so easy to rationalize. Yeah, but I'm actually being really smart here because I'm chasing this new opportunity. You just have to understand that it is just a different skill set, but you can retrain as well. I think, and I think there's the requirements of a company, scaling from the early stages to being a big, well-established company, change so much. Then there's just this kind of unbelievable growth journey that you need to go on. But the good thing about being a founder is because you have so much skin in the game and so much tied up in this, it does just take you on this crazy learning journey. So yeah, I think the learning curve of the founder is so incredibly steep. But I think for the people who are willing to to really be aware and reflect and learn and put in the hard yards, then I think it definitely can be done.
Yeah, amazing. And so your learning journey. Had you raised previously?
No, I mean, not previous to this startup.
Yeah, so that was a learning curve for you. So what did you,
Very
how did the raise go? What, any learnings from that you could share, or was it fairly straightforward?
Yes.
What did you have when you raised that 2 million? I think you said it was, and what was in place?
We've done that over kind of multiple rounds. So
sure,
it's it was very drips and drabs at the beginning. So the first cabin, we went out to friends and family, and actually we only went out to about 10 people, and we got a little bit of money, and then COVID hit, and all those conversations went dead. And so the first cabin, we ended up raising 25K from friends and family, and then got a 15K startup loan, and then got another 10K or so from some angels after we launched. So it was so drips and drabs. And then for the first kind of proper funding round, which was pre-seed, again, I spent a month going back and forth with one investor, and then one of our existing investors put me in touch with a founder who just raised, and he was like, "Mate, what are you doing? It's a numbers game. You just need to be talking to way more people." So at the time, you could use these automated LinkedIn outreach tools, do 100 requests a day. They've restricted it to 100 a week now. So he just sent me this tool, and I would just spam 100 angel investors every day for 4 weeks. Probably got about 50 calls off the back of that, and
really?
that ended up turning into a funding round. So it was a real.
Why is everyone talking about this spray and pay is nonsense and it's dead, and cold outreach is dead and all that sort of stuff? Are they just trying to sell their own courses and all that?
100%. Yeah. Cold outreach work. It's amazing what a cold email could do. People Harry Stebbings obviously doesn't need cold outreach anymore, but he'll do posts about how he emailed Mark Benioff 100 times or whatever it is, and there's just something about that relentlessness. I think.
Forgive my professional persistence, but here I am again.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think it's a skill as well. So I was terrible at it and got a bit better at it, and got enough to get it done. But most cold outreach is just so terrible, and it's I think that's it. It's because people get a lot of inbound where they're like, obviously I'm not going to respond to this, so then they assume
it's just junk.
It's a waste of time. Yeah. But it's
so the key is in the message and having actually something to sell, because for me it's selling to a point.
Selling. Yeah, I mean, you just never know when you're going to catch someone. We had some huge YouTuber who I just sent a cold email to, and he just happened to be thinking about his relationship with his phone when he received the email, and ended up investing and all of these kind of things. So you can just get these kind of real inflection points based off it. So yeah, I 100% think that cold outreach is not dead. But then once you start to get investors on board, getting referrals, and there's definitely, especially the VC game, which we were never really in because of the kind of asset heavy nature of the business. So it's not really a VC play. So we've done it mostly with angels, and from this point, it's actually mostly debt to scale it. So fortunately, I think haven't gone down that path, because I know a lot of founders who do have VCs on their board, etc., and I think it adds complication. But that
changes the business.
Yeah, exactly. But all the people who get the best rounds done, it's a very intense, booking as many calls as possible into a short period of time. And I think where fundraising goes wrong, and I've done this at times, is you don't bring that same level of intensity, and you just string it out over kind of months. You're almost a bit half-hearted and downbeaten. And I think there's something about bringing as much energy as possible to really go and smash it out the park and create competitive tension.
Yeah.
and just pack it into a small amount of time as possible.
Yeah, I guess the thing on that actually, and that's interesting, is it can become a distraction. So how much of your time were you spending on that? Did you consciously think, oh, we need to fundraise, I'm going to focus 80% of my time on this and get it done? Or, what was the kind of split there?
I wish I'd done that more, to be honest. Like, it was a bit, I was a bit, if I'm being completely honest, laissez-faire with it in the early days. But, money will come and we can just kind of figure it out as and when we need it. So I probably spent a bit too much time just kind of serendipitously, kind of drafting or magicking up some money when we needed it, rather than going out and just getting the kind of big lump in. Because it is a full-time job, and it's amazing the mental pressure, the mental load as well when you're doing a funding round. So I think, I reflecting on it, like, I think I probably didn't take it as seriously as I should have in the early days, and as a result, just spent a lot of time on it. But but also, we got kind of very scrappy with ways we did it. So we created a financial product so that individuals could fund cabins, and that worked really well. And so we raised quite a lot through that as well. There's you can really dig deep and get creative, because the other thing is that all businesses are different in terms of what funding profiles they suit. And for example, our business, capital intense, because we own the assets, most of them. We're not EIS or SCIS, so it makes it hard on the angel side. It's not really a VC play. We started in a zero interest rate environment, and then interest rates went up to 5%. So obviously the whole debt landscape completely changed after that. But then we do have the advantage of we have the assets on our balance sheet, so we can borrow against those assets given the right story. So I think there's just something about really understanding like what kind of funding makes sense, because there's such a narrative of you just need to go out and do your seed round and pitch these guys and do this, and it's like so few startups are actually suitable for that VC model. Sure. Of can you return the fund realistically? Yep. And then but so many founders feel like that's the way we have to do it. So I think
it's seen as the holy grail for a lot of people.
100%, yeah. And I think it's very hard to think from first principles about what kind of capital makes sense, because the other thing is like people I know founders who I know one particular comes to mind that announced a 40 million funding with Series B, whatever they want to call it. Most of it was a debt facility on disastrous terms, and so nearly sunk the whole business. And there's something about this kind of chasing these big funding rounds.
Metrics,
these big so you can announce it on LinkedIn and just signing in. There are people who just signed 180 million funding rounds during COVID with 2x liquidation preference, and then when the fucking tide goes out and all the valuations come down, then the founder just has no chance of seeing any return. So those businesses just become zombie companies. So I think there's too much emphasis on the number that you raise and not enough on the terms.
Yeah,
it's because
really interesting.
That's what's outwardly visible, right? Like that's what people are going to see on LinkedIn. And I think like the hiring and the overhiring, like people get caught up in the vanity of it all.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's a nice little takeaway. Actually, more focus on the terms rather than the numbers. Let's wrap up with what does the future hold for Unplugged, and what what's happening over the next couple of years?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I feel like we're just getting started. We're 5 years in, but right side of history. Like, I really feel that there's a chance to do something special here and actually move society in a different direction. Because all of the momentum of society is towards spending more time online and more time on our phone. And just by existing, but also by succeeding, we move that conversation in a different direction. So yeah, more of the same from us. I think really doubling down on the UK, and I think the real opportunity for us has become culturally significant. So that being unplugged is as synonymous with switching off as Ubering is for getting around. And so I think the further we go with it, the more it's about having that long-term vision of just like, how can we just keep compounding this, keep banging the same drum, and just kind of, I really feel like we're starting to develop a bit of a movement around it. And it's like, how can we just turn that into a revolution and just really start to get people on board with this and thinking about how that shapes the future? Because we're very much not anti-technology. I mean, we are obviously a completely tech-enabled company, all from tech startups ourselves. But I just think there's something so magical about actually going, and profound about going and spending 3 days offline. And if our small contribution to history can be that we can make this a little more widely practiced, I will die happy.
What a great mission, guys. If you are stressed, needing a detox from your phones, head over to unplugged.rest. Is that correct?
That's right.
Brilliant. Hector, thank you very much for joining us. Guys, if you enjoyed this one, don't forget to subscribe, like, leave a review, and we will see you on the next one. Cheers, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to Launchbase. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and share. Stay tuned for more insights on tech, funding, and product launches. See you next time.